Don't blink, because there was a man who stood closer to Jesus than almost anyone else while he was dying. Not someone who believed in him, not someone who followed him, not someone searching for truth. A Roman soldier, a trained executioner, the kind of man who had spent years watching people reach the end of their lives, not from a distance, up close, close enough to hear their breathing change, close enough to see the moment fear turns into silence, close enough to recognize exactly when a body gives up. This wasn't new to him. He had seen it before, again and again and again. Men begging for mercy, men screaming until their voices broke, men promising anything just to make the pain stop. And every time it ended the same way. Weakness, silence, stillness. And then nothing. No mystery, no meaning. No deeper question, just death. And after a while, that kind of repetition does something to a person. It removes reaction. It removes hesitation. It removes feeling until what used to be disturbing becomes normal. And that's who he was, a man who didn't break. He didn't second-guess orders. He didn't look for meaning. He didn't stop to reflect on what he was doing. Because reflection wasn't part of his world. Control was, discipline was, execution was. And in that system, there's no room for doubt, because doubt slows you down. And men like him were never trained to slow down. And then came that day. At first, it looked like every other execution. The same process, the same structure, the same expectation. Another man condemned, another sentence carried out, another moment that would end, exactly the way all the others had. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. But something didn't follow the pattern. It didn't start with something obvious. No sudden shock. No immediate realization. Just a shift. The kind of shift you don't see, but you feel. The air felt different, heavier. The atmosphere changed in a way that didn't make sense. People stopped talking, not because they were told to, because something about the moment made them stop. And then the sky changed, not slowly, not like the natural dimming of light. Suddenly, darkness covering everything in the middle of the day. And for a man trained to read environments, to understand situations instantly, this didn't fit. This wasn't part of the process. This wasn't expected. And that's when something started to feel wrong. Not dangerous, not yet, just wrong. And then something even stranger happened. The noise faded, not gradually, all at once. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, the kind that feels like something is holding its breath. And standing there, at the center of it, was a man who had seen death more times than he could count. A man who understood exactly how these moments were supposed to go. And for the first time, in all the executions he had witnessed, he didn't feel in control of the situation. And that shouldn't have been possible. Because something inside him started to shift. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to break the pattern he had always relied on. Because now, he wasn't just watching a man die, he was trying to understand what he was seeing. And that's where everything changes. Because this moment, right here, is where a man who never questioned anything starts to feel something he doesn't have a framework for, something he can't explain, something he can't ignore. Because whatever happened on that hill didn't end when the execution ended. It followed him. And from that moment forward, he was no longer the same man who arrived there. You might not see this channel again, so do well to subscribe. Turn on post notifications and share this video to your families or friends so they learn from this video. Are you in the United States like myself, or somewhere else around the world? Let me know in the comments section below. After Jesus died, something strange happened, not around the crowd, not in the sky. Inside one man, a Roman centurion, a man trained to suppress emotion, a man who had seen executions so many times that death had become routine, predictable, controlled. He knew exactly how a crucifixion ends. The pattern was always the same: pain, pleading, weakness, silence. Nothing about it was mysterious. Nothing about it was spiritual. Just death. But this time, something didn't follow the pattern. Or because as he stood there, watching the final moments, he wasn't analyzing a body anymore. He was trying to understand something he couldn't explain. The way Jesus spoke didn't sound like someone losing. The way he died didn't feel like defeat. And then it happened. The moment everything stopped, the moment the body went still, the moment the noise disappeared. And out of nowhere, without planning it, without thinking it through, without even understanding it fully, the centurion said, "Surely this was the Son of God." That sentence should not exist, not coming from him, not in that moment, because men like him don't make declarations like that. They don't reflect, they don't interpret meaning, they don't assign divinity to executions, they carry out orders, they observe, and they move on. So when a man like that says something like this, it doesn't come from belief. It comes from being confronted by something he couldn't ignore. Because think about what just happened. A man who didn't follow Jesus, didn't believe in him, didn't expect anything supernatural, was the one who said it first. Not a disciple, not a follower, a soldier. Which means something at that cross was powerful enough to force recognition out of someone who had no reason to believe. But the story doesn't stop there, because he didn't just witness it, he participated in it. At some point during the execution, the centurion stepped forward, not emotionally, not dramatically, just doing his job. He took a spear, cold, precise, and drove it into Jesus' side, not out of anger, not out of cruelty, out of procedure, to confirm death, to make sure the execution was complete. But that moment is where everything shifts, because from that point forward, he wasn't just someone who saw something unusual, he was physically involved in the moment that confirmed it. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable, because witnessing something is one thing, touching it is another. There's a difference between watching something happen and being part of the moment that seals it, because once you cross that line, you don't just remember it, you carry it. And according to early accounts, when that spear went in, something unexpected happened. Blood and water flowed out, not like a normal wound, not like something he had seen before. And for a man trained to recognize death, that detail didn't make sense. You might hear that and think it's just another detail. It's not. Because from that moment forward, his role changed. He wasn't just the man overseeing the execution anymore. He became part of the moment that confirmed it. And once that happens, nothing about your life goes back to normal. For a while, That moment just existed, unexplained, unresolved, recorded, but not followed up. The Bible tells us what he said, but not who he was, and not what happened next. And that silence should feel strange, because someone that close to that moment should have a story. But for a long time, he didn't. Until later, much later, a name starts to appear, not in the original account, but in early Christian tradition, a name attached to the man at the cross, Longinus. And once that name enters the story, everything changes, because now he's no longer just a figure in the background. He's a person with a life, with a past, and more importantly, with a future. And if you follow that name, if you trace what happened after that day, you don't find silence anymore. You find something else, something heavier, something darker, a man who couldn't walk away from what he saw. He leaves the hill. The execution is over. The body is gone. The crowd has scattered. The noise has faded. And from the outside, everything looks normal again. But internally, something is off. Not immediately obvious. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just different. At first, it's small, barely noticeable. A thought that lingers longer than it should. A moment replaying in his mind, when everything else should have already moved on. Because this is what soldiers do. They move on. They don't sit with moments. They don't analyze what they saw. They don't question meaning. They execute. They leave. They forget. But this time, he doesn't forget. It starts in fragments, not full memories, pieces, unfinished flashes, the sky going dark, too quickly, the way the air felt, heavy, unnatural, the silence that fell over everything, like something was watching. And then the voice, Jesus speaking, not like a man losing strength, but like someone who knew exactly what was happening. That part doesn't sit right. Because some moments don't stay in the past, they stay with you. And that's what this becomes. Not memory, presence. Days pass, then more days. But the distance doesn't help, because it doesn't feel like it's getting further away. It feels like it's getting closer. He starts noticing something strange. It's not just that he remembers it. It's that the memory doesn't behave like other memories. It doesn't fade. It sharpens. Details become clearer, not weaker. The exact moment the body went still, the exact tone of the final words, the exact feeling in the air when everything stopped. And then something else creeps in, something he wasn't expecting. Doubt. Not about what he did, but about what he witnessed. Because for the first time, something doesn't fit inside his understanding of reality. And this is where it starts to change him. Not physically, internally. Because once a man like this begins to question something, he doesn't do it halfway. He replays it again, and again, and again, trying to force it to make sense, trying to reduce it to something explainable, something ordinary. But it won't fit, because nothing about that moment felt ordinary, and the more he tries to explain it away, the more it resists, like something that refuses to be ignored. And that's when it becomes dangerous, because now it's not just memory, it's pressure. And then it happens. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but definitively. A single thought stops leaving. that wasn't just a man. At first, he resists it, pushes it away, dismisses it. Because if that thought is true, then everything changes. Not just about that day, about him. Because what does it mean if the man he helped execute was exactly who he claimed to be? That question doesn't just sit in the mind, it destabilizes it. Because now, it's not about what he saw, it's about what it means. And meaning is harder to escape than memory. He tries to bury it, distract himself, return to routine, orders, structure, control. But none of it works, because the thought doesn't weaken, it strengthens. And the more he ignores it, the louder it becomes. Until eventually, it's not something he's thinking anymore. It's something he knows. And once something becomes truth in your mind, you don't get to unknow it. And this is where everything shifts, because now he has two options: ignore it, suppress it, go back to normal life, or pretend nothing happened, or face it. And the facing it comes with a cost, because Rome doesn't reward men who question reality. Rome rewards obedience, silence, control, and he knows that, which makes what he does next even more dangerous. He walks away, not emotionally, not impulsively, deliberately. He leaves the system that built him, the structure that defined him, the authority that protected him, and he gives all of it up for something he can't fully explain. Because truth demands a response. And once he makes that decision, everything changes, because now he's not just a man with a memory, he's a man with a message, and that message is about to make him a problem. Because the moment he starts speaking, the system he once served will no longer protect him. It doesn't start the way people expect. Not in a crowd, not on a platform, not with authority. It starts quietly. Small conversations, short exchanges, moments that don't look important at first. Someone asks him a question, simple, routine, about that day, about the execution, and instead of giving the answer people are used to hearing, he pauses. That pause matters, because for the first time, he's not repeating what he was trained to say. He's deciding whether to say what he actually believes, and then he says it, not loudly, not dramatically, calm, direct, measured. I was there, not a claim, not an argument, a statement. I saw what happened, still calm, still controlled. But now there's weight behind it. And then the line that changes everything. This wasn't normal. And that's when people stop talking. Because something feels different. This isn't rumor. This isn't speculation. This isn't a second-hand story. This is a man who stood there, who saw everything, who had no reason to lie. This is testimony. And that's what makes it powerful, because people don't expect this from him. He's not a follower. He's not part of the movement. He's not trying to convince anyone. If anything, he's the last person who should be saying this, which makes people lean in. Not emotionally, instinctively, because when someone who shouldn't believe something starts speaking like they do, it creates tension, and tension pulls attention. At first, it stays small. One conversation becomes two, two become five, five become more. People start repeating what he said, not as doctrine, as curiosity. Do you know who was there? Do you know what he said? Do you know what that soldier believes now? And slowly, without intention, without planning, his words begin to move. And that's when something changes. Because now, it's no longer just a private realization, it's becoming public. And this is where the tension builds, because what he's saying doesn't exist in isolation. It challenges something, it contradicts something, it disrupts something. Because think about what's happening. A Roman centurion, a man inside the system, is now telling people the execution was not what it seemed. That's not just unusual, that's destabilizing. Because systems don't break from outside pressure. They break when something inside stops aligning. And now he's inside the system, speaking against it. Not aggressively, not rebelliously, but consistently. And consistency is what makes it dangerous. Because a single statement can be ignored, but repeated truth starts to spread. And this is the moment everything changes. Because up until now, he's just a man with a story. But from this point forward, he becomes a problem. At first, nothing happens. No confrontation, no warning, no visible reaction. And that's what makes it worse, because powerful systems don't react immediately. They observe, they listen, they wait. And somewhere, quietly, without announcement, his name starts to come up. Not publicly. Internally, a Roman soldier, now speaking in ways that don't align. A witness who won't stay silent. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Because once the system notices you, it doesn't forget. And the man who once operated inside that system is about to learn something he never had to face before. What happens when the system you served starts seeing you as a threat? A Roman executioner, now spreading a message that challenges the system itself. That's not belief, that's rebellion. It doesn't happen in public. There's no announcement, no warning, no confrontation, because systems like this don't create noise, they remove it. At first, everything feels normal. Same routine, same environment, same structure. And that's what makes it effective. Because when something finally happens, it feels sudden. Not because it was rushed, but because it was already decided. It happens quietly. A presence, a shift in the room. The kind of shift you don't notice immediately, but you feel. Then footsteps, measured, deliberate, not aggressive, not emotional, controlled. And in that moment, he understands something without being told. This is not a conversation. No explanation is given. No accusation is announced. No debate is offered. He is simply taken, removed from where he stands, removed from what he was doing, removed from the space where he still had some level of control. And just like that, everything changes. Because that's how power handles threats. Not loudly, efficiently. There's something more unsettling about silence than violence. Violence is visible, predictable. Silence means the decision has already been made. And in that moment, he realizes something that most people never have to face. He is no longer part of the system. He is now subject to it. The man who once enforced order now has no control over what happens next, no authority, no rank, no protection, just awareness, because deep down, he already knows why this is happening, not because of something he did, but because of something he said, and more importantly, something he refused to stop saying. The room is quiet, not empty, controlled. No chaos, no raised voices, no visible anger, just structure. Because this isn't emotional, it's procedural. He is not treated like an enemy. He is treated like a problem. And problems are solved. They don't start with punishment. They start with a solution. A simple one. Clean. Easy. Take it back. Not aggressive. Not shouted. Calm, measured, because from their perspective, this doesn't need to escalate. All he has to do is correct the disruption, say it wasn't divine, say it was just another execution, say the darkness meant nothing, say the moment meant nothing, say he was mistaken, and everything returns to normal. And this is where it becomes real. Because this is no longer about Rome, it's about him. Because what they're offering him isn't punishment, it's escape, a way out. All he has to do is deny what he saw, and in exchange, he gets everything back: his position, his safety, his identity, his life. And for a moment, this is where most people would break, because the cost of truth is now clear. It's no longer internal, it's no longer philosophical, it's real. And the question becomes, is what he saw worth losing everything? And then it happens. Not loudly, not emotionally. He refuses. Not because he's trying to be strong, not because he's trying to prove something, because he can't do anything else. Because once you've seen something like that, you don't get to pretend you didn't. This is what makes this moment powerful. He's not choosing belief, he's choosing honesty, because the truth has already settled. It's no longer a question in his mind, it's a reality he cannot escape. And denying it would require him to become something else entirely, something false, something empty. And at this point, that's no longer possible. So the decision is made, not by Rome, by him. And once that decision is made, everything else becomes inevitable. Because the moment he refuses, the outcome is no longer uncertain. It's just a matter of time. At some point, the process stops being hidden. There's no more conversation, no more offers, no more chances to reverse what he said. Because once a system like that reaches a conclusion, it doesn't go backward. And now, the same system he once served turns on him, not emotionally, not out of anger, but with the same precision, the same structure, the same efficiency that he himself once enforced. And that's what makes this moment different. Because this isn't chaos, this is order turning inward. And when order turns against you, there's nowhere to run. Everything about the scene feels familiar, not because he's been here before as a victim, but because he's been here before as an observer. The structure, the process, the positioning, the quiet before it begins. He recognizes it, not as something new, but as something he used to stand outside of. And now, He's inside it. And that's when it fully settles in. This isn't happening to someone else. This isn't another execution. This is his. There's a moment, right before everything happens, where time feels different, slower, not because anything has changed externally, but because internally, everything is clear. There's no more confusion, no more questioning, no more internal conflict, just awareness, because he knows exactly why he's here. Not because of something he did, but because of something he refused to deny. And that should bother you, because the difference between him and everyone else who walked away that day is not what he saw, it's what he did with it. Because now everything connects. The hill, the cross, the darkness, the words. The moment he realized something wasn't right, the moment he said it out loud, the moment he refused to take it back. All of it leads here, and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The man who once stood watching executions is now standing in that same place. The man who once confirmed death is now waiting for his own. The man who helped carry out the crucifixion is now inside the same system that carried it out. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because it's too complete, too aligned, too precise. And then it happens. Not dramatically, not loudly, just final. And in that moment, the story closes in a way that feels almost impossible to ignore. The man who helped crucify Jesus was executed for believing in him. And the weight of that doesn't hit immediately. It settles slowly, because it forces a realization most people don't expect. He didn't die as a soldier. He didn't die as an executioner. He died as a witness. And that changes the story, because now it's no longer just about what happened at the cross. It's about what happens after someone sees it. But here's the part that stays with you. His story didn't start when he began preaching. It started the moment he realized something and couldn't ignore it anymore. Because once truth reaches you, you don't get to pretend you didn't see it. And for him, that moment happened at the cross. Share this video to a friend, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I will see you in the next video. Good night and God bless you.